Right, so hi everyone. My name is Udi, and I'm just testing out my gear for live streaming. And what we'll do is we'll have a quick look at Pigments by Arturia. And hi, Tony. And what I'll do is I'll give you a quick tour of this very, very amazing synth. Really like it, really like the workflow, and really like the graphics, and particularly I like the sound. So if you have a chance to download the demo and play with that, do it. It's just one of the best synths that I've came across lately. And what we have here is really pretty much everything you need in a synth, pretty much. So we'll go through that real quick. So we don't have a lot of people here, and that's fine. I'm just testing out my my stuff here, but you'll still get a lot of information. So if you're not subscribed to my channel, I'll be very, very happy if you do subscribe, so you'll get updated when I upload new stuff. I have a complete course on pigments. I really like it, so I've made a complete course, about 7 or 8 different videos. So check it out. I have lots of other videos in my channel. So if you're into synthesis, if you're you want to learn more about plugins and stuff, so check it out. Some of the videos are very long, so definitely I'm going as deep as I can. Now before we start, if you do like this video, if you like pigments and you decide to purchase it, there's a link at the description, and I get a little something when you buy using my links. So there are affiliate links, so appreciate that in advance. Right, so let's get started. First of all, pigments is not new. It's but it's not old. It's about 1 year, and they've just released, Arturia just released the 2.0 version, which adds some new features, and we'll go through that. So what we have here is the main panel here, and you can see sections. So this section is the noise, it's the sound section. So this is where things start. Then you have your filters, and we have a couple of filters here. And then we have all our routing and modulations over here. And then there are specific windows here where you can adjust those modulators. Very, very easy to navigate. And then we have some macros here. Now, this is the main, I would say, main panel where you do stuff, and when you open pigments, that's what you see. That's what basically it looks like. But you have 2 more panels. You have your effects, and you have your sequencer or arpeggiator. Right, so we'll go through that real quick later. So let's start at the very beginning. When you open pigments, you see that panel here, and what we have is 2 engines. We have engine 1 and engine 2, and they are practically identical. So they look the same, they do the same, but you can adjust them differently. So we have 3 options, 3 different engines in each of these tabs, and basically you can set them both to the same. So I can have analog here and go here and have analog. That's perfectly fine. And And this is what we have. I hope you hear what I'm playing. Let me know if you hear it. Right. So we have analog, we have wavetable, and we have sample. And this is very, very nice. Not a lot of synthesizer have all these options. So I really like the idea that you can have a mix of analog and wavetable all together. Now you don't have to use both of these engines. You can click the on and off button here, and you can, just audition any of these engines here. So I'll get you through some basic synthesis while we're here. Now, if we go to our menu here, you can go to template and select the default. And what we get here is the very basic wavetable. And right now it's set to just sine wave. And you can see that you can flick through all these options here, all these wave shapes. So let me play something. So this is very basic sine wave, and nothing special. And then if I change the position, then you'll see that I'm just going through all these shapes. So in order to show you the power of pigments, and in order to give you a sense of how easy it is to shape your sound, I'll jump right into the most exciting and I would say the best feature, and it is the routing or modulations. So naturally, when you're designing a sound, you want to automate some of these parameters. And for example, if we have a wavetable, we can do this. We can click the plus here, and then we have all these modulators ready for us. And we can take, for example, an LFO, and maybe I'll give you a quick intro. What is an LFO? But an LFO is, in few words, it's an oscillator. It just cycles through a wave shape, and you can set it to go, halfway, maybe quarter way, whatever. And now when I'm playing, so the question is, how do I shape that LFO1? I can go down here to LFO, and this is LFO1, and we can see the rate. So right now it is a sine wave, and it is just going through, back and forth. And I can go and change the speed or the rate. I can go slower, can go faster, and I can change the shape of that LFO. And that will affect the position. So see how simple it is. See how intuitive this interface is. Very quickly you get sounds. So going back to the basics now, I can go to my my LFO, and I can see this view here. I see that I have an LFO that will shape my wavetable position, and I can click here as well on that ring, and you can see the position here, that value here. So we'll go through that maybe in some advanced kind of session, but for now that's the idea. So I can set it slower, faster, and I can set the initial position. So that's the wavetable, and in essence that's our sound generator. And I can go and select analog, and here we have 3 different oscillators. We have oscillator 1, oscillator 2, and oscillator 3. And I can do a lot of stuff here. Again, this is just an intro, so I'm not going very deep into synthesis and what you can do. But let's see, what can we make out of this very simple engine. So first of all, we have all our basic shapes. For example, a sine wave, triangle, sawtooth, and so on. And when I play, this is what I hear. And I can do something like this. I can turn on the volume for the second oscillator, and now they will both be playing at the same time. But I can change the tuning here. For example, I get 4 semitones. So that will give me a kind of a chord. So let's go to this shape. Now, one of the very basic elements of synthesis is also a filter. And so right now we have only one filter engaged here, and that's filter 1. And I can select from, I mean, that's very impressive. You have 9 different filter types here. And the multi-mode is the basic one, but it gives you the most, I think, the most useful shapes here in terms of modes. So you have low pass and high pass and band pass and notches and so on. So I can do this. I can go and select this. And if I want to automate the cutoff, again, that's pretty easy in Pigments. So what we can do is we can do this. We can go and say, hey, let's take LFO2 and put it on that cutoff here. So how do I do that? So again, I have 2 options. One of the options will be to click here, LFO, and then all I need to do is just find all these parameters where they have that yellow ring, and just click, and there you go. See how easy it is. This is pretty cool, very unique. And I can set the starting position wherever I want. Very, very easy. And I can set the resonance, which is a kind of a boost around the cutoff point. So again, if you want to learn more about synthesis, I have a basic course, about 4 or 5 different lessons that will get you through all the basic ideas. So that's the filter, and we have another filter here, which I can engage here, and I can set to something else, for example, format, which is kind of mimicking how our vowels, how our human voice is operating. Now, if I want to send each of these oscillators to different filters, I can do it here. So I have my filter mix here. I can go to filter 1, filter 2, or anything in between, and I can set here the filter routing. Right now they are working in parallel, but I can set them to work in series, meaning filter 1 will feed filter 2. And again, I can change the frequency shift here, and I can say, hey, let's do that. I click here, and I'll go to LFO3. So that's the idea. Now, before we really jump forward, I think one of the very basic elements of synthesis is envelopes. And I see that a lot in Facebook, people not sure, I mean beginners, they're not really sure how to use envelopes. So I think one of the very nice things about pigments is those little dots that you see. So you see exactly what's going on. And if we go to our envelopes here, that tab here, we have 3 different envelopes which we can assign to any of the parameters. So right now there are 2 of them are not really assigned to anything, but the first one is locked, or coupled or hardwired to our VCA, which means in human terms that will control our overall volume. So it's pretty it's pretty easy to shape your sound right away. You don't need to think about anything complex. So what is an envelope? Let me give you my very quick introduction to envelopes. So an envelope is a way, it's a method to control parameters over time. And right now, when I'm playing a note, that note will almost immediately go to its maximum volume. And let's go back to something easy here. So the sound goes right away to its maximum velocity, depending on how I strike the keys on my keyboard. But then when I lift my finger from the keyboard, it will just fade away immediately. So what can we do to adjust or to set that kind of settings for our sound is to use our envelope. And as I said, the first one is already locked to our volume. So we have the attack. The attack will basically define how many seconds or milliseconds would it take for the sound to reach its maximum velocity. And so right now, if I'll play something, it will take about 1 second to reach the maximum volume. And let me select another sound. Right. So right now the attack is very very short, right? But if I change the settings here, right? So that's the attack. So attack was easy. The next very easy setting here in the envelope is the release. So the release means that after I lift my finger from the keyboard, how much time would it take for the sound to fade away? So right now it's set, let's say, to 1 second. So I'm playing something and then lifting my finger. So it took about 1 second to fade away. Let's try something else. I'll get key. So you can see that dot just going very slowly until the fade away. So the other 2 parameters are decay and sustain. And these are a little trickier to grasp if you're not familiar. So let me try and explain. So after we get the initial attack, we get to our maximum volume, we can drop into what we call sustained volume. That will be the volume that the sound will be in as long as my finger is on the keyboard. And the decay will be the amount of time that it will take for us to get there. So an example. Let's set this to 1 second. Let's set this to 1 second. Let's set this to 50%, meaning 0.5, and this will be 2 seconds. So this envelope will be 1 second to reach the maximum velocity. Then it will take about 1 second to reach to our sustained volume, which is half of the volume of our initial attack. And then when we release the finger from the keyboard, it will take about 2 seconds to fade away. And there you go, that's the envelope. But we can take an envelope and use it on the filter, for example. So let's do that. I can take the cutoff, click here, go to envelope 2. Now I'll play something. And you can see that the envelope 2 is actually shaping how my cutoff is behaving. So that's the idea here. So that was our wavetable and a little bit about the analog, where you can shape some things, and we saw a little bit of how to use those modulators. We'll go through that again in a few minutes. So let's cover some more stuff here. So one of the very interesting things about pigments is the unison here. And that unison will give us few things very, very useful. So voices, the number of voices that we have, and you can see that I can increase that. But I can go to chord, and when I go to chord, I can set what chord I want. For example, major. Right, so this is pretty cool. And then I can set the stereo widths here, and if we go to super saw, maybe that's not the best preset for this kind of manipulation, but let's try something else. So you can actually hear the detuning going into action here. And again, I can set chords, fives, minor 7. So again, that's the analog engine, and it's pretty cool, and you can use those 3 oscillators, and you can also use oscillator 3 to be synced with oscillator 1, which is also very interesting. But let's go back to wavetable. When we are in wavetable, there are all kinds of things going on here, and what it really means is that we can shape our basic waveforms, or the current waveform that is playing with those options here. So we have frequency modulation, and we have phase modulation, phase distortion, and wave folding. And it's a very complex kind of subject to explain, and I have some of it in my pigment course. So most welcome to browse my channel. I see that some new folks joined the session here. Very welcome to browse my pigments course and my synthesis course to learn more about that. But generally speaking, it doesn't really matter, because what it does is just further shaping your sound. So this is the basic sound, and this is with some frequency modulation. So this is pretty cool. And I can go on, and I can select whatever here. And I can do more and more stuff. So this is the wavetable, and again I can shape that as well. Now if you want to change the whole structure, you're starting from scratch and you want to get some other waveforms, no problem. Click here, then go to, for example, synthesizers, and I don't know, get that thing here. Right, so and I can have 2D or 3D. So the difference is that sometimes it's very nice to just see the current playing wave shape. And again, I can manipulate that with whatever, let's say this thing here. So what else? This is the wavetable, and again it goes on and on. I can go to sample, and this is new in 2.0. So let's go to our template here and go to default and go to, actually let's get the granular pad. So what they've done here is pretty cool. So they added in 2.0 a new engine, which is both a sampler but also a granular synthesizer. And again, I don't have enough time to go through all these options here. Hey Jason, I see your questions, but I don't have the time to go into that. So I'm sorry. Yeah, you're saying the two-dimensional view shows what's happening when you're doing FM. Absolutely. So I'll get back to that real quick. We can go to Engine 2 and select Wavetable. Go to 2D and see what happens. Right, so I can actually see exactly what's going on. Very, very good point, Jason. Very good. So going back to our sampler here. So first of all, we have the main, edit, and map. And I have a quick video showing you how to use the sampler, but let me give you a some idea of what's going on. First of all, we have different slots. So right now we have a sample loaded into slot A. I can go to slot B, and you see that it's empty. So I can click here, select, I don't know, Magic Bell, and now it's loaded. And you can see that I'm playing that one. Now I'm playing this one. And I can go to mapping and say, okay, right now it's a single, but I can go and say, let's do a sample pick. And you can see that I'm flicking between A and B. And of course, I can automate that. I can click the plus here, go to, let's say, function 1. And you can see that little dot here running. Right, and I can do a round robin, which means that every note I play, we're alternating between those samples, between those slots. And I can do a key map saying which keys control which sample, or do it by velocity. So that's the idea here for this sampler. Going back to main. So again, I can use the granular or not. And granular synthesis is a complete topic by its own, so I'm guessing we don't have time for that as well. Right, so the granular synthesis means that we'll take the sample and then we'll just slice it into grains, and then we'll play through those bits and pieces through time. And one of the questions that I saw in Facebook in one of the groups was, hey, how can I load my own samples? So when you go here, click here, you'll see that you have a folder and you have that little wave shape here. If you click the folder, you can actually select your own sample. So I already have something here. I'm clicking OK. And unfortunately, I moved those. So let's see if I can get us get something else. For example, samples. Right. So you can see that this sample is already tuned to A note. So it is important to go into edit and say, hey, this is not a C. That's not the root. And you can do this. Just so it will be in tune. So there you go. I just loaded my own sample here. Very cool. Right, and again, I can go to the VCA, go to the envelope and set things. And I can go to my effect. So let's jump into the effect section. So in Pigments, we have 3 buses. We have our bus A and B, and then we have the send bus, which is running in parallel, like in your DAW, when you're setting your, for example, reverb and stuff. So in each of these buses, you have 3 slots for 3 different effects, and you have quite a lot of options here. For example, we have distortion, filter, EQ, phaser, flanger, chorus, tape echo. So lots of options. Beat crusher. Let's select something here, flanger. And I can do this. I can add that insert here. We can select tape echo. And we have the dry and wet. And we have a reverb. Let's change that to distortion. And then, of course, I can go to my send bus and set the reverb here. And that's my send. Very, very nice. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So you have 3 different slots in those 2 buses. And then you have a 3rd bus, which will be the send bus in parallel to everything else. So that's that. Let's go back to something else. Let's go to our template here and see some sequences. Right, so in Pigments, we have a lot of stuff going on in our arpeggiator / sequencer. This is really, really nice. And you can turn it off and on here. You have the off, and then ARP, sequence. So if we go to ARP, then that's an arpeggiator. So if I play a chord, then it will flick through the notes. And if we want to have some kind of a melody, we can use the sequencer. And the sequencer is pretty easy to use. It has some very cool features here. I'm not going into each and every detail, but let's do this. Let's go to some default sound. Let's take a key. And right now there's nothing here. So I'm setting a sequencer, and you can see that when I play something, I'm just flicking through those slots here. And the rate is set here. So this is the rate, it's 16ths. So I can go and say, no, I want to have 8 notes. And if I don't want all these slots here, no problem, go and change the length here. Let's just stay at 4. And then I can change the notes. You can say, okay, you go G, you go D sharp, and you go D. Right, and I can also have something with, you know, I can change the octave. See how easy it is. Very, very intuitive. And then we can set the velocities. I can say, okay, this little guy should be half the velocity of the others. And then I can do triggering probability, gate length, and slides. So let's go to the slides here. And then we have gates. And then trig probability, which means that not every time you're playing that note will be heard. So I can say, okay, you will be 50%. And you can hear that not always that sound is heard. So that's the sequencer in a nutshell. And I can do all kinds of stuff in terms of randomizing those parameters. Let's try and play with that. So I can say, hey, let's do this, and I can do this. I can set the randomization probability here. And you can see that little line here, which means that we're just going off the tune here. And another very cool option here is to set the scale. And I can say, all right, let's go and select some other scale, for example, harmonic minor. Which we are already almost in, or melodic. And what it really means is, if I'm trying to set the notes here, you'll see that I'm jumping through, and I'm just not able to go off scale. This is pretty cool. If you don't know a lot, like me, if you're not used to write music in notes, I know scales, I know music, but sometimes it's so easy to just set that. And what we see here is that we're locked into our into our scale. This is pretty cool. So you will always sound great. So this is the scale. And then, of course, I have an arpeggiator, and I can set different options here, for example, up and down. And that's the arpeggiator. And again, I can set the rate to a different rate. And so on. And we have another feature here, polyrhythm, which I'm not going to at this point. I have an explanation about this in my Pigments course. And again, just let me stop here and say thank you for for joining this session. If you joined in the middle, you're welcome to watch this session from the beginning later. I have some trash talking with my friend here, Jason, at the beginning, but you can skip that. And if you like the videos, if you like my channel, please subscribe. It really helps me. And if you have any questions or any concerns or maybe requests, as time permits, I can answer. I can do more videos and more reviews. I'm happy to do that as long as I have my free time here in the studio. And I have a couple of Facebook groups that I run, and you can find the links in the description or in the about section, I think, of the channel. And just one last thing here, if you're planning to purchase pigments and you're using my link, then I'll get a little something. I'm affiliated with Plugin Boutique, so whenever you're buying something, I get a little incentive that keeps me going. It just get me it will not get me rich. It will get me just a little bit of incentive to go and do more and more videos. So that's Pigments for now. Let's have a quick walkthrough of what we have in Pigments one last time. So we have two engines. They're identical. You can select any of those engine types: analog or wavetable or sampler. And the sampler is really dual kind of purpose. It is a sampler, but it is also a granular synthesizer. So that's very, very nice and unique. And then you have a lot of options to manipulate your parameters, and every parameter here is adjustable. So for example, I can take the tuning here. Let's select something else. I can take the tuning here, click the plus, and set a function. So what's that function? If I really want to see, I'm just clicking here, function, and that's what we have. So that's the idea of setting those parameters. We have our filters, and we have manipulators, which I already said. We have some macros that we can assign and then automate through our DAW. We have our effects, sequencer, and arpeggiator. And that's pretty much what I was planning for this session. And again, thank you so much. I'll be ending this session right now, and we can set a new time. If you have any preferred subject, that will be maybe something that I can do in the future. My next session hopefully will be later this week. It will be about Synth Master 2. I'll keep you updated, and again, follow me in Facebook so you'll see exactly what I'm planning. I'm just starting out with those streaming sessions, so bear with me. Thank you so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.